All right, guys. Good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning also to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, also co creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us wherever you're watching from. As you will know, every week we try to make it a point to give you the goings on in entertainment or pop culture, if you will, in our show known as This Week in Pop Culture, giving you the spark notes, the cliff notes of this past week. And of course, I'm not going to be alone in talking about these said topics. So without further ado, I want to welcome my co-host, my partner in crime, Mr. Spillman Trueheart, aka Spills. What is going on, sir?
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? We've been having some small technical difficulties, so I'm not going to
Sure.
rehash my joke from the first time because it won't hit as hard as it did the
No,
last
it's
time,
all
ladies
good.
and
It's all
gentlemen. But
good.
that's fine. We're getting it together. It's the holiday seasons. We've
It
dipped
is.
into our eggnog a little bit, so we're having some technical difficulties over here, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely, absolutely. So just as Spillman said, we were having some technical difficulties. We were able to iron them out, so we're back with you guys. So we're going to dive right into our stories. As I mentioned before, when we try to do our first attempt, we're going to have a relatively short show. There are going to be some things that we talk about in film and TV, but also some stuff in sports. And we did have some things that went down. So I am going to start first with a fun little animation that was done, and this is a shout out to the group of or the page known as Basketball Forever on Facebook. They always have entertaining animations. Let me see if I can get this going for you guys. I don't know if you can hear it, but here we go. All right, so as you can surmise, we do have a return of sorts happening in the world of the NBA. None other than Kawhi Leonard supposedly is making his return after being injured, which is a normal theme that we're accustomed to seeing when it comes to Kawhi Leonard. But let me go into a few more details as to what's going on there. So this past Thursday, on Bill Simmons'
Wait, but don't go into my truck.
podcast, he had
It's gonna go into my truck.
mentioned. Hold on one second. One second here.
Don't go into my truck.
So yes, on Bill Simmons' podcast, it was mentioned that a star player, Kawhi Leonard, had made his way, or should say, will be making his way back to the Clippers lineup before Christmas. To go into more specifics about it, he essentially said, "My Clippers guy was telling me that Kawhi Leonard's coming back before Christmas. I think he is ramped up. He's ramped up and ready to go." So, just to give you guys just some background information on the Clippers, if you are not following them, star guard James Harden has helped to keep the team afloat in the franchise player's absence, holding the sixth place spot in the Western Conference, which is not too shabby considering how dense the amount of teams we have in the West are and the amount of talent that we have in the West. So, Spillman, I have to ask you, do you believe in what Simmons had to say regarding Kawhi Leonard? And additionally, uh, do you feel like it's a good move? Do you feel like it's a good move to actually have Kawhi Leonard join at this tenure in the season?
Well, I think, of course, a player of Kawhi's caliber, you'd love to have him on your team. He affects the ball on both sides, defensively and offensively. He's a great shooter and he's a great facilitator. But can he stay healthy? That's the question we ask. Ever since he had that knee injury all those years ago with the Spurs in the first round against the Warriors, when he had Steph and them boys on their heels. He hasn't been right since. He's been a hired gun essentially since then. He's been great, but without his ability to stay on the court, it's for naught. I think that will help the team. I hate to see the other team at crypto doing well. I hate to see that. That they're the B team. Obviously they're the B team, but it is what it is. I think that Kawhi is a great player, one of the all-time greats. That run he had in 2019 when he beat the Warriors in the finals, and that hit that famous shot against the Sixers that I think broke Joel Embiid. After that, I don't think Joel Embiid was the same. But if he's back, that's good. I think he should start playing on Christmas. Why push it? The team is on in a 6 seed right now, which isn't bad. Especially for the Los Angeles Clippers, a 6 seed. That's a banner year for them. They usually aren't a 6 seed, so that's interesting to me. But I don't really see how this affects him. I'd like to see if he's available in March, April, May, and June. That's what we care about. Him coming out in December, that's great and all, but give us something more. I have friends that are Clipper faithful. My cousin is a huge Clippers fan, and I laugh at him because he's talked about how bad the Lakers are, and they traded all their assets for Anthony. Anthony Davis won us a championship. I haven't seen Kawhi do anything but be in Drake videos since he got to Los Angeles. So I don't really, until he starts performing, he does that little. He did the dance. The dance was cool, but dance on the court. We want to see you dance on the court, Kawhi.
I hear you. Well, everything that you said, I don't disagree with. I agree with everything that you said. I'll just continue on that same track by just saying the Clippers have demonstrated, as I mentioned before, a momentum and a rhythm that they currently have right now by being in the 6 seed, and we can both attest to this as folks that have played basketball and have had those moments of having a player that's injured where they're coming back into the lineup after being away, and grown accustomed to not having them there. Sometimes that can disrupt the rhythm that you guys have. It can disrupt the rotation that you guys have, and kind of the flow that you guys have. And it's not to say that that player is not needed; they are, but if they're not 100%, as you said, it's a waste of time, I feel, to put them back into the lineup. Allow the team to continue on the momentum that they have. And when you absolutely need them or need that said player, then start weaving them back into the lineup. I would say if you guys are really hard pressed on this, what is it, this load management that you continue to allow Kawhi to do, then it makes no sense to throw him back into the lineup and then potentially have him get injured again, and then potentially having to reacclimate the team to not having them in the lineup, in which they're going to have to readjust to that same rhythm that they had before when he wasn't on the team again. So I just feel like it would be more of a distraction, if anything, by having him come back versus perhaps having him come in, as you said, maybe during the spring, where it gives them some time to kind of get some reps in and to get ready for the playoffs when absolutely that you would need him. But at least for right now, I mean, there's no sense of trying to stop the bleeding when it comes to the Clippers. They're doing okay without him, so allow them to continue to play without him, because you're going to still, even with Kawhi being back, you're still going to need those other players to be able to play at the top of their game. And the way that they can do that is by getting more reps and more time in by him not being in the lineup. So I don't know if you have any further thoughts on that.
I just would like to see Kawhi play like Kawhi can play. I've seen him, fight a monster. I've seen him destroy your Warriors. I've seen him destroy tons of teams. He has. I'm sorry. That man was a one-man team. He was about to beat y'all by himself in 15-16, but he got hurt. So
Oh, man.
We'll never see what really was. But he's the goat. Not the goat. He's not the goat.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know why I just said
Wow.
that.
Where did that
I was
come from?
thinking about LeBron. I was thinking about
Where did that
LeBron.
come from?
I was thinking about that man.
Right.
So,
Right. I'm,
you
I'm, I'm
know,
glad you agree that LeBron is not the GOAT. Good job.
no, LeBron is the GOAT. He's the
Good
GOAT.
job. I know that
He's the GOAT.
subconscious came in. That subconscious kicked in, and you knew.
Wow.
It's all good. It's all good.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, do you hear this? Terrible.
But while we're on that said topic of LeBron and the Lakers, I figure we do a quick update on the NBA Cup. I know that we have been talking about it just as it had started or commenced. And with that in mind, considering where things stand right now and how many teams that we had involved in it, I feel like the following quote would be accurate. And then there were eight. And the reason why I say, and then there were eight, is that now we have pretty much wrapped up what we have with each of our groups and trying to determine who the winner is out of each of those said groups, those three groups that we have, if you recall, in the East, and those three groups that we have in the West. So now we have those teams determined, and we also have the wild card teams determined. So as it stands right now, the matchups are the Thunder versus the Mavericks, the Rockets versus the Warriors. Yes, my Warriors. The Bucks and the Magic, or say Bucks versus the Magic, and the Knicks versus the Hawks. So Spillman, now that the champions from last year are no longer a part of the NBA Cup, who you got?
So I just want to get these thumbs down because we're not in it. You see that rain? This is a sad day, ladies and gentlemen. LeBron and them, they was in Miami earlier this week. They got blowed out by 41, and I know that we're
Blowed
not
out.
talking about it. But hey, I said my friends, they woke me up with texts about how they got blowed out, and I was like, wait a minute, they was in Miami, they was hanging out last night. I don't want to hear about that. If you was hanging out in Miami the night before, and then your job expected you to perform, you wouldn't perform either. So that's a Miami win. That's why they put that team down there so they can steal wins. But I think that my odds on favorite right now, who would I say I think I like? I don't like the Hawks. I don't trust them. Maybe the
I don't trust
Knicks.
them either.
I think the Knicks maybe because they need this to gel. And also maybe the Bucks. I think the Bucks or the Knicks are my favorites to win it all. I see the Warriors as a good team. It's amazing the Rockets are there. They're playing
It is.
far
It is.
above their roster. I think that this is the year that they try to make the turn back with their players. But the Thunder and the Magic, I mean the Mavericks, they're okay. I like the Mavericks, but it depends on if Kyrie gets hot and stays hot. And I know that they've had some issues with Luca.
And it
And
depends if
I
Luka wants to play defense.
and
If he
I
wants
don't
to play
imagine
defense,
that they want to, yes, for sure. And I don't imagine they want to keep pressing it because they have bigger things in sight.
yes.
Ultimately
Yes.
being healthy in June. So
Yes.
I would say either the Knicks or the Bucks. I think may win. Your Warriors are looking surprising.
Surprise.
I mean, they got rid of their guy. I mean, the chemistry is interesting. Sometimes it's addition by subtraction. I imagine that the Warriors will fall off the cliff next year because usually that first year after somebody gets traded, you're
You're kind of on
okay.
a high. Yeah, you're kind of
You're
on a
still on a
high.
high. We ain't need
Yeah.
him. Da 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 da. Then you go through an off season, and then you come back in the next fall, and then it's like, oh no, this is done. We're done here. So we'll see.
Well, I'll
Um,
talk to both of your points. One, I will say that I actually will say that the Bucks are surprising because as much as they have a good lineup on paper, they haven't really been able to make it work or to find success in what they've been able to execute on the floor, despite what their lineup may say on paper. Um, I will also say I do believe that the Knicks will make that jump this year. Especially now with having Cat on the team. They have some more size, they have some more versatility. I feel like this tournament will be their coming out party, so to speak, of them being able to show the league, who they are and what they're capable of. and I feel like they will be able to continue that momentum. Of course, as long as they stay healthy going into the postseason for this coming for this season. Now, I'm going to say something objective, believe it or not. When it comes to the Warriors, I do see them potentially getting to the finals, but I do feel the one team that could get in the way of them accomplishing that, believe it or not, is the Thunder. The Thunder, they aren't an old team. They're not extremely young, which is what you have with the Rockets. They are a team that has some experience when it comes to the postseason, and they have terrific defense. They have defenders, whether they are forwards or guards, the wings, whatever the case may be. They have a lot of versatility defensively in terms of what they can throw at you. And I feel like that could be a potential problem for the Warriors, especially if we're talking about the Warriors being able to shoot from behind the arc. If you have wings that can defend and can get out there, then that might cause some trouble for the Warriors, and it may force additional players outside of Steph to be able to step up, and it will really be a test for them to be able to show that they can do that outside of Curry. So while I do feel like the Warriors have a shot to get to the championship, I wouldn't be surprised if the Thunder throw a monkey wrench in that. So ideally, I would say I would see the Knicks getting past the Bucks, and I see either the Thunder or the Warriors coming out of the West to challenge the Knicks. So, and then after that, I feel like all bets are off. It's kind of a toss up. So
Okay.
uh,
How do you feel about news that the ratings are down in the NBA? I know we're reaching the end. Good morning, Ray. How you doing
good
today,
morning, Ray.
buddy?
Good morning.
Um, yeah, I feel like the numbers are down. I feel like everybody's caught that Steph Curry disease. Don't nobody want to play the way that you play real basketball, and
Yeah,
it's hurting.
yeah,
It's hurting.
yeah. I agree with that too. I feel like a lot of what's happening in the league is just by virtue of the fact that people have fallen in love because, and this is, as you said, in large part to Steph Curry, people have fallen in love with 3 pointers. And it's not just the players, it's the teams themselves in terms of the schemes that they run with their offenses, where they're trying to not only have personnel that can shoot threes, whether they are guards or bigs, but also being able to utilize that in terms of volume of shooting more of them. And I feel, unlike the way it was maybe a decade ago, there is a lost art now of the mid range shot and how effective the mid range shot can be. And it's not to say that 3 pointers aren't cool; they are, but everyone is not Steph Curry. Everyone is not capable of shooting at the clip that Steph Curry can, and I feel like a lot of teams are now going with that approach of, if you can't beat them, join them, that they think that they can outshoot Steph Curry and his style of play in order to be successful in NBA. And I don't feel like you need to. I feel like the mid-range game needs to come back, and I feel like the post game needs to come back,
For
because the
sure.
post game can help, actually, as much as people don't want to admit it. The post game actually can help with your 3 point game, because if you have a big that is a nuisance in the post, and you're doubling down on the post, then that means it can be kicked out to your 3 point shooters, which happened all the time, once upon a time, 10, 15 years ago in the league. That used to be a regular thing. You had someone like Shaq, or you had someone like Duncan, or you had someone like Howard. You surround them with shooters, then it opens up the game for you. It's the same. It's no different even with Joker. You have him. He's able to shoot outside. While it's nice to have that luxury, that's great. You shouldn't be relying upon it in order to be able to win your game. So, and because everyone is not a Steph Curry level shooter, it's turning people off because they're just continuing to see bricks. They keep seeing players building houses out on the floor. So yeah, I don't know. And I think also what is a factor that plays into that is what we have with the All Star game too. I mean, we went into to detail about that. That there's a lack of anticipation. I remember a time where even at the beginning of the season, people were already thinking of the All Star weekend of, oh, who are we going to have in the All Star game, or who are we going to have as players competing in the slam dunk competition. Like, it was always an anticipated event, and I feel like this year, um, while there is some attention paid to it because they're changing the format, I don't feel like it's the same amount of anticipation. And so now that you also don't have that excitement going at the start of the season, you also have lack of anticipation for further into the season as well. But
For sure. I
hopefully,
definitely agree with that.
hopefully it can all come together. Hopefully they can figure it out on
Yeah.
some solutions. But that's going to do it for what we have with our sports portion of this show. I wanted to hop into the film portion, and the first thing that we're going to talk about is a horror franchise that is has officially announced the start of its production. So let me put that up for you guys. So if you recognize the said weapon there, we did have a post on the social media of I Know What You Did Last Summer, announcing the start of its production. Just to give you some further details on this said film, and this was this past Tuesday. This film that's set to arrive next summer has, as it stands right now, has its plot details still under wraps. But if you are familiar with the original franchise from our era's film, and it's hard to believe it was at the 90s, that the original film follows four young friends who are separated by a tragic accident but reunited when they find themselves being stalked by a hook wielding maniac in their small seaside town. Considering the original film, we wouldn't be surprised if there is some plot points that carry over into this said film. In terms of cast, Freddie Prinze Jr. is confirmed to reprise his role from the original films, but not much else has been confirmed in the way of OG characters. And I say that, I know a lot of people out there will probably say, well, his wife, Sarah Michelle Gellar, had hinted at a return, but the jury is still out on how she might figure into the movie. So there's not a whole bunch in terms of confirmation of where that stands. So, Spillman, I have to ask you, I don't recall if you were a fan of this franchise, but how do you feel about this sequel? And I put sequel, you don't see me doing it. I'm putting sequel in quotation marks because I do have some thoughts on it, on what they may be doing with this story. Don't have any proof of it, but what are your thoughts on us continuing this franchise?
Well, I Know What You Did Last Summer is a cult classic. I did see that Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar were making jokes about it online.
Yes.
Obviously, I saw that Freddie Prinze is reprising a role on it, so I feel like that makes it a sequel. If there's a reprisal, unless he's going to reprise and be like one of those that they like to do, like they did even with like the Mean Girls reboot, where it's like, oh, there goes that person from the first movie. They got a
The
scene where they're
cameo.
in the movie for like
Yeah,
a cameo.
cameo.
It's like ah, but if he's actually in the movie, that'll be interesting. Obviously, Jennifer Love Hewitt was the star of this movie, so if she's in it, she's in it. That'll be interesting. They said that Sarah Michelle Gellar will not be in it because she is dead. That's what she said when they asked her. So that's pretty interesting. But I think it'll be a good time. Obviously, this is a cult classic. Definitely one that we grew up on. This might be one of the ones that Brandon actually, you know, went to back in high school. I know I
Yeah,
did back in the
yeah,
actual theaters. I feel like this
yeah.
is the
We
actual
closed some theaters.
a
Yep.
butt in the seat kind of a movie. Like you
Because
had to
we
be
had
in
that
there.
era. I feel like we had that era with slashers where we were getting a lot of slasher films. I think this was also around the time that we had Scream. And so you had a lot of films where, or should say, you had a lot of studios that were trying to compete with each other with the horror genre by doing all types of, quote unquote slasher films. You see it all the time whenever we have some change in terms of a genre and people enjoying a certain component of that genre, that more and more studios try to come up with their own variation of it. Because I remember even with Blair Witch, after Blair Witch, we started to get more found footage films. So,
Oh, those
you know,
shaky cam movies were the worst. I was so mad at them. They were all too dark, and then they like this. It's like
uh,
I don't know what I'm looking at. You're telling me this is scary, but really it just looks like a bad fight video. Like I want to see the person get knocked out or the monster. Like I remember when the first Cloverfield came out, that
yeah.
shaky cam stuff was just terrible. It's like, look, this is a kaiju movie. We want to see the monster. Stop making shaky videos with a monster just sweating on people. I don't want to see no monster sweat. I want to see a monster eat a building.
But I'll say this. This is the reason why, and I know some people are saying reboot. So hear me out. When I'm talking about reboot, the reason why I mention that is a lot of times when we've had these sequels where it's been years upon years since we've had the prior installment of a given franchise, it starts getting into a different territory. While yes, it can be potentially be just a normal regular sequel, I feel like I'm sounding like what's his name, a character from Scream, going over those horror movie rules. But I digress. When you have that amount of separation since the last installment, a lot of times you have the potential of getting into other types of sequels. So another type of sequel that has become a more commonplace thing is what they call requels. And a lot of times when we're talking about those requels would be those circumstances where you have a well-known franchise that they may decide, okay, we're going to piggyback off of this part of the plot or the timeline, and then we're going to ignore everything that came after it. We do have examples of that even recently with the Halloween franchise, where they ignored some components of prior installments and picked up literally after that first film and ignored everything else. So maybe there is a component of that, which when we're talking about franchises that do things like that, we're talking about films that are in a way doing a small a soft, not a complete reboot, but a soft reboot of sorts, where they are deciding what things they're going to count as canon and what things they aren't. If anyone remembers, and I'm gonna, I know it may have been a while, if anyone remembers I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, so the sequel from way back when with Brandy and all of them, uh the film closed with Jennifer Love Hewitt's character uh, being taken by the killer. We don't know if it was a dream. We don't know if it actually happened, but maybe this film provides some insight as to what that really was. Maybe it was in fact a dream. Maybe it was in her head because she was just traumatized by the events of those two occurrences that happened in that sequel and the original film. Or maybe it really did happen. Maybe something did happen to her. Maybe Freddie Prinze Jr. characters, who was her fiance at the time, or say, I guess they ended up getting married by the end because some time had passed. But regardless, maybe he got remarried. Maybe he's traumatized based off of something that happened to her because she ended up being taken by the killer. We don't know. So I just feel like there are a lot of possibilities of what could happen with this, where it can be a regular sequel, it can be a requel where they ignore certain things and they decide that what happened in the second film never happened and they're, hopping off of just the events of the first film. Or like you were saying, Spillman, it could be an instance where they're completely ignoring everything that's happened in those two films and they're just we're bringing back original cast members to take over said roles. And maybe they're taking over their same said part, or maybe they're taking on another part because maybe they have aged out of the part that they would have originally played. So we'll see. We'll see.
Maybe they're finally going to make a middle-aged horror movie because most horror movies take place where people are at the cusp of adulthood, so you feel some type of way about them. Maybe they're trying to experiment with the fact that audience really don't care if middle-aged people die. Unfortunately, they'd be like, "Oh, that's sad," but they lived a life. Um, I feel like Jamie Lee Curtis is the only one I could think of that's actually been a middle-aged person in a horror movie. I think most of the people in horror
Well,
movies.
I will challenge that, and the only way I would challenge that is when we're talking about a franchise like Smile. Outside of the most recent, obviously, installment where we had a pop singer,
They went
outside
young
of
with
that,
that one.
yeah, outside of that, the characters were, working professionals. They were not high schoolers. They were not college students. They were, adults. They were grown adults, had full lives, or had working careers, and the stories were centered around them. So, but there is something to be said about that. Because as you said, we do have that happening. We had it happen in the most recent installment, and even with Aliens, we don't have middle aged people anymore like we had in the
No.
other installments. We had characters who, for all intents and purposes, even if they weren't high schoolers, they were probably like college age. They were early 20s, in their 20s, late teens, 18, 19, early 20s. So there is something to be said about that, for sure. For sure. Any last thoughts before we hop into the last portion of what we have here with film and TV?
Now let's get to it.
All right, cool. So the next story that I want to hop into is centered around a certain Netflix show um, known as Wednesday. So just to give you some info on this said series, last Wednesday, fittingly, last Wednesday saw Netflix celebrate the production wrap of its highly anticipated second season of Wednesday by debuting a photo of Jenna Ortega as the titular character. Following her character's journey at Nevermore Academy, where her parents, Morticia and Gomez, played by Catherine Zeta-Jones and Luis Guzman, respectively, where they first met a quarter of a century ago. The first season, if you aren't up to speed, saw Wednesday develop her burgeoning psychic abilities as she tracked down a monster terrorizing the local town. As it stands right now, the series is scheduled to premiere sometime in 2025. And the series will include Emma Myers, Joy Sunday, Hunter Duhan, Victor Dorobantu, Musa Mustafa, Georgie Farmer, Isaac Ordonez, and Luyanda Unadi Ludus Namo, with Zeta Jones, Gusman, Ordonez, and Lewis Yama all being upped to series regulars. So Spillman, I don't know if you had a chance to check out the first season of Wednesday. If you have, terrific. I'd love to know your thoughts on what the second season has in store, or if you haven't, will this encourage you to go back and check it out before the new season begins?
I didn't check it out before, but I may be tempted to try to take a look at the franchise itself. I was a big fan of the Addams Family in the '90s. Raul Julia is one of my favorite actors of all times.
Yes,
So I'm excited to see what they do with that. But it's just interesting to see Jenny Ortega. She seems like she's uh the it girl of Hollywood. It seems like
yes,
she's the I don't want to say Black Queen of Hollywood, but that's how I would describe her, as like one of those um uh she's the girl with the black hair. They put her in some of the alternative type shows and movies and stuff. So I'm intrigued to see what it's like. I may check it out. Just to get some of the Addams Family lore in. I do like that. It's interesting that they gave her psychic powers. I don't remember her having psychic powers in the original show. I don't really remember them being explicitly supernatural
supernatural.
people.
Yes,
I don't remember it being that way. Obviously, things change. People decide, oh no, we're gonna make the supernatural So I'm just interested to see where it goes with the show. I just, obviously it's very cool what they're doing with these characters, so I'd like to see what they do. Did you partake in the original season of this show when it first came out? I remember we covered it.
Yes. I'll say this. Believe it or not, this is the one series that I have still not gotten around to seeing. I have so many friends that have said, "Oh, you got to check this out. You got to see it," and I've always, had it in my queue to check out and just haven't done. But maybe I will take an initiative now to be able to check it out. Like you, growing up, I was a fan of the Adams Family, and it was like some other shows out there. It was my what is it? My what's the term that I want to use? It was my window into being a fan of horror. There were a lot of elements of that where they play it safe in some ways when it comes to the horror genre, but they still do tease and imply a lot of things that you do see in that genre. And so, gateway. There we go. It was my gateway into the genre of horror. So I'm very appreciative of that because of that fact, because I love horror now, and now I get into the more crazy horror stuff now these days. But yeah, like you were mentioning that you didn't remember there being much in the way of the supernatural. I feel like there was some supernatural elements. I mean, even with Thing, there had to be something going on there of him being able to function without having a body. And with some of the other characters, because I do remember that there were some like creatures and things like that that were kind of teased that were a part of the lore and a part of that universe. I think more so is that they didn't really get into the family themselves, if memory serves, having special abilities. They were a little off, don't get me wrong, but in terms of explicitly having like psychic abilities or doing all these other supernatural things, they themselves as a family, if memory serves, didn't always explicitly seem to have abilities themselves. It was what was surrounding them that was supernatural, that they in the world that they lived in. So I am interested in that. I guess another reason why I didn't really immediately hop onto the bandwagon when it came to Wednesday is I remember that there was a lot of hoopla about the dance scene, and that became a big thing. And so, like a lot of times when you have those things, that kind of moments in a show that supersede the show or take off beyond where it started, what show it started from, it seems kind of gimmicky to me. And so it kind of turned me off of hopping onto the show. I was like, okay, what is this? Why are they making such a big deal out of this dance? And I mean, it's nothing to what those that enjoy it, and maybe it will make more sense to me in the context of the show, where I would enjoy it a lot more. As I said, I haven't watched it. I just know moments from the show, and that's one of the main ones that I remember or recalling again and again from that first season. So uh, a lot of people have encouraged me to check it out. So I plan on doing so. Um, we'll see. I won't say, try to predetermine that I won't like it. I may very well, enjoy it, because a lot of folks have said that it's similar to what you might have with a show like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or some other shows that have come out since then that kind of have that supernatural bent to it. So we'll see. We'll see. Any last thoughts before we wrap up today?
No, I just, I'm really interested. We're still in the world of reboots and remakes
We are.
and requels,
We are. We very much
I
are.
feel like, the things that have popped on Netflix truly in the last couple of years have all been things that were original properties. And, we gotta get back to that, ladies and gentlemen. If we're gonna make, things work, it's gotta be original stuff, because we've seen all this stuff before. We've seen the Wednesdays and Adams Family. It's like 3 or 4 iterations. This is the third generation of Adams Family. It's crazy that they got Catherine Zeta-Jones back to still play Morticia. That's amazing. Good for her. Good for her. Or no,
But I
it
will,
wasn't. She wasn't the original. She wasn't the one from the '90s. That was Angela
Angelica
Houston.
Houston. Yeah,
Angelica Houston. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But I'll say this though. While you bring up that point, we as audience members, and I'm not saying us specifically, but I'm just saying in general, we as audience members have a responsibility too. I feel like audiences don't really realize how much power they have when it comes to a lot of these shows and these films that we see. Money talks, and when we're talking about Hollywood, Hollywood responds to where the money is going. If money is being supported towards shows, if eyes are being supported towards shows that people, enjoy, and audiences are demonstrating what shows they enjoy by watching it, and we were the that said, market research or intangibles are coming in to the studios to see who's watching what, they're going to provide those resources. They're going to green light those projects that people are watching. In a sense, and when we're talking about the films, if people keep throwing their money out to reboots and sequels and things of that sort, then studios are going to continue to make those. And don't get me wrong, I love sequels. I love sequels. I love for stories to be able to continue. But at the same time, if that's the only thing that we're supporting when we're going to check out a film at the box office, um, or say if that's the only thing that the box office is showing that audiences are going to see, then those are the only movies that are going to get made and greenlit. Unfortunately, it's just the way
Yeah,
it is, because a lot of these films are investments. At the end of the day, they're putting money out with the expectation of getting money back. And if that investment isn't being met, then that investment isn't going to be done.
for
It's
sure.
really that simple. So, but that's going to do it for this week in pop culture. As I said, apologize for our technical difficulties from before. We were able to iron it out, but thank you guys for staying with us. I'm going to punt it over to Spillman. Spillman, can you tell folks where they can find you?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me at Truly Spill on Instagram. We're there every week, every day almost, because that's the nature of social media. Um, and we can just catch up and talk about the topics we like to talk about. And have a great week. Make sure you purchase those Christmas gifts now, because that last day for shipping is quickly approaching, ladies and gentlemen. Trust me, I know.
Indeed, indeed, and of course, you can always. Again, I want to thank Spillman as always for joining me on this week in pop culture, and you can always bring him up to speed on why LeBron is not the GOAT. Just educate him a little bit. It's all good. It's all good. Really do appreciate it. I see him shaking his head.
That's terrible, ladies and gentlemen.
But
We know who the GOAT is.
you can find me at Brandon Choi ENT on X and Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram. Also wanted to give you guys an update that if you guys are aware, a lot of times with the content that we have here is that you guys have an ability to be able to interact with us on either of the streams that we have, whether it's with YouTube or with Facebook. And then a cool thing that we have with Facebook, if you enjoy a lot of the content that we do here, you actually can send us some Facebook stars. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. We do have that feature available now. Announcement that we do have that feature available now, at least on the Facebook side of our streams. So if you do enjoy our streams when you are checking it out on Facebook, you do have the ability to do that. And if you're not aware, stars is basically something that allows you to thank the creator. You can shoot some stars our way, and those stars allow us to be able to redeem those stars to be able to support the show. It acts as money that we can use to support the show. So if you so decide, you do have that option to do that. With that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and we'll see you soon. Peace.